I congratulate to the Institute for opening up the PES chapter under IEEE student branch of your institute. I congratulate to all the students for getting this opened and for getting future benefits. Congratulations are also to the student volunteers, especially the chairs who have been appointed for this PES. First of all, I would just like to comment because these chapters are really very good to open, and you initiate some of the activities which normally you don't think of in a normal course of operation. As your chairman has already told, you will be eligible for $500 if you report certain activity within time. So definitely the money and the technical aspects are very important. IEEE provides such platform to have benefit of such schemes, both monetarily and technically. So on the name of chapters, you can always invite people around the world nowadays because everything is now within your reach. I was thinking, or Dr. Satish was just finding out the way out for a long time, but you see now we can connect to each other within a consent of day or two. So this is a big advantage. So with this kind of student chapter, you can invite anybody, uh, anyone at any level with any kind of expertise would be happy to spare 1 or 2 hours for benefit of the student. So that's what the advantages of doing activities under IEEE, because IEEE is a reputed organization, and conducting any event under IEEE become very easy. So these are the very good things about the chapter, the branch, the office bearers. Uh, all the office bearers will get a recognition. Being a member, you will get a recognition. So definitely, it's a very positive note. And if any institute is thinking on these lines, that means you are doing positive in your academics. That's a good sign, actually. On the other side, I would just like to make you aware that sometimes what happens that opening such branches and chapters with a lot of motivation, it become easier actually. But sustaining the activities under such chapters is quite not easy actually. So if you will be, because the problem, where goes the problem? Faculties are there, your office bearers at a faculty level or the section level will be there, but students are moving actually. Today you have a third year student, final year, then they will pass out. The kind of zeal the founder members have, you need to transfer similar zeal and motivation to your juniors. So it will always be good actually to connect the student from first year, second year, third year, final year, so that the tradition goes on and the motivation should never go down with the time. So that's what a word of caution I would like to mention. And so that the idea is that your chapter or your branch, whatever you opened, should continue forever. That was the kind of advice I would like to give. Because we have also seen, I have been at a various position in the section, then at the professional chapter level of the sections, then the student branch level, the student chapter. I have seen long actually. So that's what I was just sharing my experience. I would also like to share my experience with PES chapter. Uh, it's been a wonderful, and I would say the PES chapter is being the generous, most generous among all the chapters, among all the societies. I was personally a beneficiary of PES chapter I visited first time with the grant of PES to attend the PES general meeting in Canada in 2006. And the kind of discounts and the kind of facilities they provide to student members are great actually. And you will really feel blessed about having in the PES if you are really uh, uh, active and you want to do something under that. There will be no dearth of funding, and even you can visit attending conferences in other countries. Nowadays, the things have got changed. Physical attendance is now limited. Don't know when it will be resumed, but still, there are a lot of encouragement for the student members. So these were just my remarks regarding the PES, and I wish my best wishes to uh, the institute, to the branch for the development of technical activities, and especially the power and energy society activities. So with this, let me start. I would not be very much technical at this point of time because I know many students are there. I would be starting with a little bit of generalized things regarding research, and then I will be shifting to something about the power sector in country, recent developments, some information, uh, what are the constraints in during this COVID period, and finally I would be presenting some brief slides for what we are doing at MNNIT in my department. So I chosen a self-reliant Indian power sector. It's just a term came to me actually, which was motivated from the Atmanirbhar Bharat, right? So as far as power sector is concerned, we can say that we are self-reliant. We are producing power as much we require, and we have a lot of potential to even export the power. And all modes of power generation we have with us, uh, say it conventional thermal power to the renewable power nowadays. That was the idea behind self-reliant Indian power sector. Now, I would be just giving first few general slides, which will help you understanding the R&D in our country. So, research and development is a backbone of the innovation. This is the first line. Uh, Whenever we do our academics, we go for undergraduate, postgraduate, doctoral research work. At the end, we have to contribute in terms of some R&D because it's a duty our towards the nation as well to create innovation. Nowadays, everybody is talking about innovation. So it supports all aspects of development of new products and services. If you are doing R&D in any form, let's say if you are undergraduate student, you will be doing certain percentage of R&D through your undergraduate projects, maybe in third year or final year. So some part knowingly or unknowingly you are doing it. Whether you accept or don't accept, you should do it. Actually. The amount countries spend on R&D directly reflects the economy and quality of life of its people. So definitely there has to be a good percentage of investment in R&D by any country, and that will be reflected by this. You can see the percentage expenditure on R&D. I would be just presenting the state of affairs of various countries, and you know what is their status. The expenditure on R&D in India is near 0.7% of its GDP, which is about 2.1% in China, and United States is on the top with 2.7%. One fact which is not very encouraging, India is not even in the top 50 countries in the world in terms of R&D. So we are a little bit poor in terms of investing money in R&D because that is a need of our with the government moving towards innovation. Okay, this is another thing which I would like to present actually because innovation, R&D ultimately lead to patents. So the number of patents you file in any year or in any decade will reflect the kind of innovation you are doing. So according to World Organization of Patent, a total 50,000 patent applications are filed in India, right, in a year, as against to China, where 1.5 lakhs applications are filed, and in US it is about 6 lakhs applications are filed. So this speaks about Indian relatively poor position in R&D till now, but the things are improving. I'm not saying we are at a very almost a backbencher. We are there in a race. We have to go ahead. Another thing which we are lacking actually in all the sectors, not only in power sector, but in all the technical sectors, is industry academia interaction. So inadequate involvement of industry and higher education sector, as well as lack of collaboration between these entities in India, right? Whereas they are very strong interaction between these two entities in China and US. So that speaks about the kind of research work we should do, the kind of collaborative work we should do to enhance our quality of innovation and the research, because all these points which I mentioned are connected to each other. So a country has to be progressive, then you should have a good academic and industrial collaboration. You should pick up a problem of an industry so that you can do a right kind of work in every academic curricula, whether it is undergraduate, postgraduate, or doctoral research, even the postdoctoral research. You should do a quality work. Your institute, industry, government should invest in research, and then ultimately if these will happen, you may be in the position to write new papers, uh, publish in good journals, attend good conferences, and if at the highest side you can file a patent, if it's really a worth. So these were just key highlights. We are little bit lacking in our education system because it's a way old education system. We are now working on the new education policy 2020. Government has already circulated its composition of new education policy. Everybody has to adopt a new education policy, maybe a year or so. And then probably whatever the things I talked may be filled up. The aim of the government is to invest 6% of its GDP on R&D. That's a quite ambitious target, but it is there on paper. So that's what I am mentioning here. The kind of way we are learning will be possibly be changing. Our learning should be more on inquiry and discovery based. It should not be a purely kind of a education we are taking nowadays, reading a book, giving examination, passing it with a good numbers. It's all there, but what we need is more about the inquisite, more query based, right? And more innovative based. You should have a more analytical approach in your studies. You should have a more discussion. Nowadays, we just listen the lectures and lectures are over, and by the time you listen the lecture, it looks great, but within an hour, everything goes wash off from our mind. So, I mean, this is what typically we all habitual of. It's not for a student, even I'm talking about faculty and myself also. Everybody is tuned to that kind of things. As far as research, the education has to be more research oriented, should be based on new ideas, innovation, and copyright. So copyright is all about publication, filing a patent. Innovation, you do your projects with a new idea. We have all new methods coming up for doing projects. We have vendors who can give us the projects. Anyway, that's not going to solve the problem. We have to be a bit innovative, little bit application oriented. We have to be more analytic. We have to think more rather than typical way of getting the things done. So anyway, we are doing it. We are changing our curricula as per new education policy. So I am involved in that stream. So I have certain knowledge about what we have to do. Now coming to the topic which I chose today, Indian power sector. So first I will be presenting a data which will be useful for all of you. Maybe you know it, but let me present. Now, at the moment, I just collected yesterday latest data. It's a very dynamic data. So every time whenever I present this type of slide, I have to update it. It's all available in Central Electricity Authority website or Ministry of New Renewable or Power Ministry. It's available. Therefrom, I have just presented. As on 28th February, means last month, because this is the latest one, we have a total installed capacity of power in our country is 379 gigawatt. This is our total installed capacity at the moment. Out of this, the typical thermal power generation is 233 gigawatt, which is from many big giants like National Thermal Power Corporation, NTPC. Then you have state governments, various private sectors. Everybody is contributing to our conventional resource of thermal power generation, and which is standing today at 61.4% of its contribution. Hydro, you know, again, it is supported by NHPC, like it's generating 46.2 gigawatt, and it is standing about 12.2% of total installed capacity. Nuclear is very steady and it is 6.8 gigawatt, standing at 1.8%. The other data, which is very dynamic and changing very fast, is a renewable. Everybody know it. Right now, it is standing 92.9 gigawatt and about 25% of the total installed capacity. Anyway, this is all, remember, this is all the power installed capacity. It's not about the energy contribution. So this is very thin line of differentiation, that whenever we talk about the 25% from renewable, it doesn't mean that renewable is contributing 25% of energy also, right? Energy you can divide again by 5, because most of the renewable, on an average, they are only providing full power for only 5 to 6 hours per day. So in terms of yield of number of energy units, you can divide it by 5 or 4, as the case may be. So this is the status of total power installed capacity, almost current data I am presenting to you. Then, as far as renewable breakup is concerned, we have just mentioned 92.9 gigawatt is our installed capacity as of now. Out of that, wind is now 38.8 gigawatt, which is now taken over. This is the first time. This is the first time in this year it happened that solar has taken over the wind installed power capacity. When I presented this slide last year, solar was about 38 and wind, 37, and wind was about 38 about. So now it has overtaken over, right? It's all because of the government policy and the kind of emphasis every government is putting forward. Small hydro, less than 25 megawatt plants are connected in small hydro. It's 4.7 gigawatt. And bioenergy is again 10.3, which is more for rural and other places. So this is a breakup of renewable as on today. This is what our potential, and we are rich in solar because we are living in a country where solar is pretty uniform throughout the year, and throughout the day also it's quite uniform. So that's why we are very much rich in solar, and we have about 750 gigawatt of potential in our country. Out of this, we have just able to harness only 100 gigawatt as on today. Still, we have a lot of potential. Time will come when we will harness more and more solar. We have a lot of targets I will be showing in the next slide. With a wind of 300 gigawatt potential, right, and small hydro 15 gigawatt, bioenergy 25 gigawatt. All in all, 100 gigawatt of potential is there from the renewable. This is Government of India targets. Many of you are aware that government has put up a target by 2022. So 175 gigawatt of power from the renewable and 100 gigawatt from solar. Out of that, 175 gigawatt, the government has a target of 100 gigawatt. So if you have seen the previous slide, we are still at 38 gigawatt. Still, we are short of total about 105 gigawatt we are short, and most of this shortage of about 105 gigawatt, 60 gigawatt we have to achieve through solar. So you can look upon about 60 gigawatt we are short in the target for the solar. So on paper till now we have about 38 gigawatt of solar, but a good news is there about 35 gigawatt already in pipeline, and which will be shortly completing this year. So and another 25 gigawatt is on the roll and is expected to complete by this. So hopefully we will meet the target of 100 gigawatt by the solar. Other wind turbine 60 gigawatt is the target. I will be showing another couple of slides how we'll be meeting this demand. Bioenergy and small hydro, we are at par as per the targets because we haven't kept any very high target on this. Another very new target by the government has come up, which is actually 450 gigawatt by 2030. This is a new target. So more than 2.5 times we have to make it after 2020. That will be the new target coming to the country after 2022. Solar scale-up plans, because solar is 100 gigawatt, how we vision it, how the government has visioned it. The first project started with rooftop projects. Every government organizations have to compulsorily install rooftop solar PV. We also installed 1 megawatt in our institution. I'm sure your institution and other private institutions are also getting targets from their respective governments, state governments, to install solar PV, because it's all have to get added to our national grid connected plants. The other large scale projects are like solar parks, which are there in many of the states, many of the districts, and landscape solar plants. It's all there. You can see nearby any of your plants. And this is all how we are cumulative solar targets we are meeting up. So that's what I mentioned, that we have to still add up 60 gigawatt this year. We are at 40 around, and 60 we have to add up. So already plans are there on the paper, and hopefully it will be met up. Some of the facts about the solar, it all started in 2010 actually, with a national mission on solar, national solar mission, with the targets of 200 megawatt of grid connected solar power by 2020. But subsequently, in 2015, the ministry revised this target from 2000 megawatt to 100 gigawatt, or 1 lakh megawatt. This was revised in 2015 because there was a brainstorming session in 2015. I was also a part of that session in Delhi in one of their projects. I know that in 2015 this target was revised to make it 100 gigawatt, okay, by 2022. Then other objectives were 2000 megawatt of off-grid solar application, including 20 million solar lights by 2022. 20 million square meter solar thermal collector area to create favorable condition for developing solar manufacturing capability in the country. Support R&D and capacity building activities to achieve grid parity by 2022. These were the things started in 2010. Then another just a slide which I will be putting in front of you. What happened in the past 1 year? What happened in the past 1 year regarding especially the solar sectors and renewable sectors? The India country has discouraged the import from the China, because China is a major supplier of solar and wind equipment. So somehow the country government has imposed an additional duty, and that actually encouraged the local manufacturer. Because if you remember last year, there were a lot of boycott from the Chinese product. So in the same line, the government has pushed up their domestic manufacturer and opportunity to local vendors to contribute to this 100 gigawatt target. And definitely many of the Indian manufacturer and domestic users have contributed to these targets. Then Indian moves to make power and renewable sector self-reliant. The Ministry of Power and Renewable Energy Skill Development Entrepreneurs have asked developers in the respective sector to avoid importing equipment for which domestic supply is available. Right? So global tenders, if you know, has been suspended by many states because of this, so that the other country cannot participate, and therefore our own vendors can get benefit out of it. So that's what I mentioned. The custom duty has been imposed so that the vendors from China cannot compete with our local vendors. That is a part of Make in India movement also. Then there was an importance of using storage with increase in renewable energy storage. You know, it's one of the very challenging tasks. Storage is one of the challenging tasks, and I would say that we are still not in parity with the other development. Say it's the power generation, your communication systems, automation. Storage is still, you can say, on a very, very far away. We have to meet, and it's a golden opportunity for our researchers as well to develop a new techniques for storage, energy storage. So India market could account for 300 gigawatt hour by 2025, considering energy storage and EV opportunities. You know, electric vehicles are coming up. I will be presenting another data for that. Some of the latest information I would like to share with you all. As you know, solar tariff to drop to a new low of rupees 1.99 per unit. And this is the latest tender in Gujarat for 500 megawatt worth of solar project in Gujarat with a new low tariff of 1.99 per kilowatt hour. So definitely it's a boost up for renewable energy, that your energy is costing just 2 rupee per unit, because everybody know we are paying about 6 to 7 rupee per unit these days. So if it is coming to such a low value, that means it's really a cheap energy, and it's an encouraging point to all of us. Then, as part of 175 gigawatt target, 30 gigawatt wind solar park inaugurated in Gujarat in this December, just 2 months back. In a Kutch by our Prime Minister, it was inaugurated. Again, it's a part of a 175 gigawatt target. EVs could account for 43% of total vehicle sales in India by 2030. This is a very useful data actually for all our students and all our researchers, and especially for PES members, that good future is there with you with the development of electric vehicles. And it has been envisaged that by CEW and CEF that 43% of vehicles will be electric vehicles by 2030. After 10 years, means in the on road we will see almost 40% vehicles will be electric vehicles. So that's good. So good sign for electrical people actually, because we always say there is a dearth of job. Maybe this will be a good thing. Then India need to generate 83% electricity from renewable energy to achieve net zero emission by 2050. Okay, so this is again another kind of target. Another kind of target we have, that according to some this green energy agreements, which you are saying, some Paris agreement or some other agreements. Ultimately, if you want net zero emission, right? So you need to generate 83% of electricity from renewables. So at the end, after 30 years, you have to do it. Okay, the country has to do it. So again, it's a good news for our young engineers, because after 30 years, you will be at the age of ours. Today we are 50 years old, so you people are 20 years, so you will be on our age, and you will be doing all this business. So these are some of the information I would like to share with you all, latest information, and a useful data for you to understand. Okay, so this was just my very small things which I presented. As I mentioned to you that I am not a pure power engineer. I'm not a pure specialized in power. I have a mix of power control and power electronics. So with all support of my research scholars, my master's, doctoral and undergraduate students, we have done some work over past 10-15 years in our department and in our lab. Dr. Satish is well aware of it all. Let me present some of the projects we have done in past 6-7 years and some of the brief of the work. So through one of the project, which was by SERB, which is a unit of DST, you know, we did one project from 12 to 16 is a decentralized distributed energy generation. So we introduced the concept of cascaded multi-level inverter, and we tried to use the generation and the distribution like a decentralized concept. Exactly not this one, but we tried to do it like this, that every house has a generation through solar and wind, and it's a consumer also. And then we have a distribution of power through distributed inverters, something like that. So that was one of the projects we have done. And this is just a brief view of the project. We installed about 2.5 kilowatt in our lab, solar PV. Then we installed some of the storage. And then through some of the softwares and development of cascaded multi-level inverter, we tried to fulfill this task of distributed power generation through solar PV system. As far as energy storage is concerned, because initially we worked with power electronics, so we developed various topologies, control methods for a power converters. Then in 2016, we realized that there are a lot to done with the storage, electrical storage. So we started with the storage technologies. And as you know, just to brief about, we have storage like mechanical, electromechanical, and electrical. Mechanical storage means it's like involving mechanical methods, movements, inertia. Like pumped hydro, you raise your level of water in terms of potential energy, like we typically do in a hydropower stations. So you can store the energy. Then you have a compressed air. You compress the air through pumps, and when you release, it will be delivering a power. Flywheel is a very popular storage, mechanical storage, which is often used in a thermal power stations to store the excess power. So these are the mechanical. They are very good, but their efficiency is low because they are mechanical in nature. Their dynamic performance is not good because they take time to deliver the power. They are not instantaneous. So they have got certain limitations. We have electrochemical. Nowadays, this is the most useful source of storage we all have. In terms of batteries, we all know lead acid, nickel cadmium, nickel metal hydroxide, lithium ion, lithium. All these are the batteries next to us. We all staying using them. Flow batteries are the new things which are coming in the category of electrochemical, and they have more life, more efficiency, but they are costly at the moment. Hope the cost will come down. So this is the one development area in electrochemical. Another area which needs much development is the electrical storage, like ultra capacitor, which we also call supercapacitors, and superconductive magnetic coil. We all know the theory behind it. They are the most dynamic intensive, the best dynamic performance we can have from the electrical storage. Unfortunately, the energy densities of these electrical storage are very low actually. They have a very good power density, but energy density is very low. That's why we are not able to use them for our popular applications. Electrochemical energy storage like batteries have a very good energy density, but they are poor in power density. But they are useful in small applications. Small applications like your residential applications. You are using batteries in your inverters, laptops, mobiles, your small EVs nowadays. EVs are next applications. But yeah, definitely when it comes to grid level applications, like you talk about the 100 MVA kind of things, 1 MVA, you don't have a storage. That's what I was saying. Still, there is a scope of doing research in the storage, because right now storage is there only at the very small level. You can say at the max 10 kilowatt is what the storage role is there, not more than that. If I ask you, okay, I have a national grid. Okay, everybody's known about the grid, power grid, but do we have a national storage? Do we have a national storage? I think you say no, we don't have a national storage. We need that kind of thing. We need, so it's a big scope for all of us. We need a national storage where we can, whatever power we have access, we can store. Like in a national grid, we transfer every power. Today, what we are doing, whatever the solar power we are generating, we are injecting into the grid. And that's how we are managing the renewable. But do we have a national storage where we can store our power at a one point? It's not there. We have to see this idea. Some of the countries are thinking on these lines. Remember this is not hypothetical. Whatever I am saying is not hypothetical. Some of the countries have started thinking and they have started developing also. And the importance of national storage is great actually, right? So that's what storage. So on these lines, we started some laboratory level work some time back, and we got one project in 2016 to 19. We worked with some focus on storage of renewable to small batteries and ultra capacitors. We developed a few topologies of bidirectional converter, variants of bidirectional converter. The importance of bidirectional converter is to transfer the power in both the directions. If you have excess power, you can store in a storage. If you have a short of power, you can retrieve the power from the storage and transfer it to the DC grid, and in turn you can transfer it to the AC loads. So with that idea, but the point is that when I am talking about the large storage, small storage, we all understand. We have a mobile phones, right? You have a very small battery in this, and you can store it. But when it comes to storing a power, like you have a adapter of laptop like this. Okay, this is all rated about 60 watts. Your mobile's rated about 10 watts, something like that. It's all fine. You can do it through your electrochemical batteries. But when it comes to storing a power like 1 megawatt hour, okay, 1 megawatt hour power. So can we store it? That is what the idea is all. Can your conventional power converters can handle such a large, huge amount of power? Okay, and why we need such a huge storage? Because we need to support our grid, right? We need to support our grid. We need to support our organizations through such a large storage. So this is one of the topology we identified, and we tried actually to address at least some small level high power storage. So in that line, we started working and we developed one of the new topology, which we call a cascaded dual active bridge converter. Cascaded dual active bridge converter. This was a new thing we developed in 2016. It's published in one of the reputed journal of IT Power Electronics in 2019, but we filed a patent in this in 2016 itself. So it is still under second and third examination. The thing is already in process. But this was the view of that bidirectional transfer of the power with a large storage and high power electronics converter. So this is one laboratory view I'm just showing: HP bridge, LV bridge, high frequency transformer, battery storage, then FPGA controller we used that time to control the power transfer. Another project we have taken from Ministry of New and Renewable Energy again in 2016, and the idea was to actually support the rural and residential power loads with the support of renewables like solar and wind. So you can see there is a solar and wind. We have a MVDC bus, medium voltage DC bus, 380 volt, then LVDC bus, 24 and 48 volt bus, and then AC bus, 230 volt AC. So that's what we thought of. Can we support such type of power transfer? You have, suppose, small loads like your laptop chargers, which can be connected to 24 volt bus. We have a big DC loads, which can be supported at 380 volt DC bus. And then we have a regular AC loads, which can be supported on a 230 volt bus. So at a small level, you can see all these things available in the market. But we were thinking of it at a bit larger level, at the level of, let's say, 5 to 10 kilowatt of, let's say we have a 2 kilowatt of wind turbine, we have a 3 kilowatt of solar PV, and then we want to have 1000 ampere hour of storage with a super capacitor also. So this is what all we envisaged, and we started this work. Finally, we developed this topology, and with a DC bus, MVDC, with a LVDC to bidirectional converter, and then we have a storage, DAB storage we used, and then AC load also, super capacitor also. Everything we used as a laboratory prototype, and then we we developed laboratory scale models for this. And you can see this is what we developed in our lab. One such installation. So we use solar simulator. We used wind emulator. Then we have used electronic load. You can see here load simulator, solar simulator, wind emulator. Because you know in North India we have a very good solar profile, but wind profile is almost nil here. So at the end we are to be relied on the emulators only. So we worked upon it, and then we developed such prototype with a, you can see the battery, the supercapacitor, everything is there. It's a small view. This is the latest work we were doing with one of the students from, again, from Andhra Pradesh, and he developed, recently he passed and joined Hyderabad, one of the institution. Idea was to generate DC and AC output both together with a single stage conversion. So that's a very new concept of hybrid converter. So what we did, we developed DC outputs. We generated the DC outputs, multiple DC outputs with a multiple renewables, and along with one single AC output. So that's what the idea. And for this idea, we developed a laboratory prototype, and recently we filed a patent on this in last November. This is a setup we developed in the lab for this experimental verification. You can see there are two hybrid converters. We connected them in through a cascaded concept to generate a high multi-level output, and two isolated DC supply, and with the help of two renewable, separate isolated renewable, and then supporting the AC load as well as the two DC loads. So that's what the idea. We developed this in the lab recently. So at the end, we are, as far as again back to power sector, I just in the middle try to put up something which is a heart of, you can say, any power sector nowadays, the power electronics. Because if you want to move to control of distributed generation, renewable storage, power transfer, you have to use a power electronics. So basically, we are moving towards now when you go to the grid level, we have to move towards the smart grid. And these were the sub-components actually. So as we all know, smart grid is a amalgamation of IT, communication, intelligence, and the power. And we have to learn this. We have to learn this in order to make our power really smart. And everybody has to contribute a bit to go in this direction. And this is what we will be looking for in the future. Our distribution system will be like this, as when I'm saying 86% by 2050 from renewable. So how you achieve it? You have to take the case by case. You have, suppose, a small location of your, let's say, your Gayatri Vidyapeeth. So you may be having a good seashore, as I was told by the Dr. Satish. Vizag is a popular sea location. You have to generate power through some marine power generation. Then I know you have a good wind profile also. So you have to install wind powers. Then wind solar park, like just I mentioned, wind and solar park. Then you have to have rooftop solar PV on your buildings. You have to develop your smart buildings with net zero concept, self-sufficient buildings, smart buildings you can see here. And with a smart control center. So this is what you can see. EVs will be moving electric vehicles will be around, and I hope with a lot of intelligent controls and database and so many things. Everybody is listening, and it has to come up. And that's how we are moving towards our Indian power. And with the data I presented is all realistic data. And at the end, we have to see this type of system in a near future. So thank you very much with the kind of data I wanted to share and the kind of work I wanted to share. I'm sure I'm in time, whatever the targets given to me.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So open for questions. Yeah, so participants, you can ask any question. I am there to answer any kind of small query or big query. It's all informal. Don't. This is not your regular class. You can ask any kind of question.
Sir Gupta, I got a small question.
Yeah, sure.
So we talked about the smart grid, and we talked about a lot of interdisciplinary work. Can you throw a little light on the type of work you have been doing in your institution on that?
Actually, as far as institution is concerned, it's all, you know, that we have a very lack of coordination. But that's what I mentioned, that whatever work we have done so far, this is what one of the work we have seen in terms of what the relevant question is. We have developed this hybrid microgrid, AC/DC hybrid microgrid with a hybrid renewable. Like we have taken a wind resource, we have taken a solar resource, and then we have used storage also, energy storage, battery, and ultra capacitor or a super capacitor to manage the loads like motor loads. This is a AC motor load we connected, and then we have small loads of DC supply. But I would not say that this is towards the smart grid or whatever IT and other things. This is just a purely electrical work. But what I'm saying that it's a need that we have to do multidisciplinary work. But yeah, if you can look upon latest solar plants installation in my institute also, we have installed 1 megawatt of solar plant. Even such solar plants, grid connected, it has got a lot of multidisciplinary approach that the people who are managing this type of plants, they are managing far off from their server sitting in the Bangalore or some other place, and they are getting each and every information of your solar plant, which you see every day from your naked eye. They are seeing far off from there, and any kind of fault they can detect in a second, and even they can send. And it's all because of this. They have put up a sensor and server based. Even sitting in my room, I can log in and look upon the generation profile of my solar plant in a graph, 24-hour, 1 month. I mean, I'm just giving you the examples. These things are there. Only thing we don't give a much focus on those things, but it's all going on nowadays. So as far as your question is concerned, I only say that at my personal level, through a project, we have done this small project which is visible to you, and we have installed a 1 megawatt of solar plant in our institution. That was as far as our work is concerned, but long way to go actually.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. But I can say that this is all even we have realized through a lab experiment. It's not just a concept actually. We have done it at experiment level, and we got a good publication in IEEE Transaction 2019. I think September you can see the issue of industrial electronics. I think this idea has been published. So I think yeah, that's what another work. Yeah, rightly pointed out. We have done some work on solid state transformer also. That's another very upcoming area. So that work is also, and it's a good topic as well. So transferring of power through a solid state transformer will involve actually the isolated dual active bridge, this structure. So just to inform, those are the new students who want to do the projects. This has got a lot of significance in a solid state transformer, which is really a power project having interest. So I hope I could address your question.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions from the audience? Some of the PG students are also there. Any questions from your side?
Yeah, students,
Yeah.
please come on. Yes, yes.
They are
Uh,
they're shy,
yeah.
sir. Yeah, student. Most of them are BTech third year
Okay,
students,
okay,
final year
yeah,
students.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's what I mentioned actually. We have to change our mindset now. We have to be more inquiry based, something like that. We are very typical listeners actually, right? So, I mean, it's fine. I mean, we are also like you only, not a problem. Everybody, whenever we take class, it's like that only. It's nothing different. But what I'm saying actually, we have to change our mindset. Every time, see, your institution, your faculty members, suppose they invite somebody and some expert. Now it's a fortunate that we are all through connected online, and we are able to hear from people who are experts. So we should take advantage of all those. So asking a question, it's not just, you can even ask any small or big questions, right? So we have to change actually. Maybe a time will come, our mindset will also be changed. Anyway, that's good. I really enjoyed making my presentation.
Yeah. Yeah, Pavni. Pavni, are you there?
Sir, yes, sir.
Yes,
Sir,
yeah,
there's a
yeah.
question from Saujanya, sir.
Right.
She's asking, how can we integrate solar modules and fuel modules?
Okay, so first of all, yeah, you can do it. Only thing that you have to look upon the dynamic performance. Generally, the dynamic response of solar PV systems are much faster as compared to the fuel cell system. See, any two renewable, because you have asked the question for fuel and solar, they have to be integrated at DC level. So ultimately, what you have to do, you have to connect like this. You can see here. You can see, I hope this slide is visible to you. Suppose this is solar and this is fuel. It is in front of you only. You have to connect two DC to DC converters, right? Because generally what we do actually, we have to maintain this voltage constant. So if suppose your solar PV system is at a 24 volt and your fuel cell system is at a let's say 5 volt, right? So you have to have suppose this 12 volt bus. So at the end, you have to convert this. You have to connect a DC converter across the solar. Generally, what we do, we also use DC to DC converter to transfer the maximum power. The role of this DC-DC converter become also to transfer the maximum power. So this bus generally governs the solar PV, but what happens, it depends upon application. If this bus is regulated, you have to regulate this bus to suppose 12 volt, and then the role of these two converters have to follow this regulated 12 volt. So both of them have to come at the same level of voltage. So that's what I'm just giving you the idea that how you can club the two. But there are a lot of control challenges, both for a fuel cell and both for a solar PV system. But there are solutions. It's all available. You people can try out. See, these are the small projects you can take up. You can take a solar PV. It's all available in your Amazon and online shopping. You can procure it. Even you can procure the PV and DC-DC converter from online shopping. And then, yeah, only thing is a fuel cell. It may not be so easy, but I'm sure with a small power rating, it may be possible. And then at least you people can combine these two resources to generate a power and transfer it to the useful load, even a DC loads. You can have a DC loads nowadays available, like DC fans, 12 volt DC fans are very commonly available in the market. You can procure it and run your DC loads. Small DC, small BTEC projects, very useful and very informative and very useful for your society also. I hope I am able to give you answer to this question. And there is one more thing which you have to do. You have to follow the voltage reference based on the droop control method in such cases. When you have a standalone system and you are supplying voltage to a load, let's say DC load, then we have to follow the reference for the DC bus using some of the method like droop control method. Just a keywords, you can search it in relevant research paper and you can do the project. So I am seeing another question coming on the chat box. You can just tell me.
Sir, yes, sir. From Saujanya again, will integration increase systems efficiency?
As far as efficiency is concerned, see, efficiency is a kind of thing which we talk at a number of levels. For example, when you talk about the efficiency of solar PV, it is about 14 to 20%. What is the meaning of that efficiency? Meaning of efficiency is how much, when 1000 watt per meter square of energy is falling. Okay, when 1000 watt is falling on 1 meter square of solar PV area, it is generating only 140 watt of power. That is 14% of efficiency for a transfer of power from solar to the electrical. That is 14% efficiency. When it transfer this power to this side, it is about 98% efficient, right? Similarly, when you are doing a fuel cell, it is a very inefficient device, but it has a different values. It is just a 5 to 10% efficient. But then again, with all power electronics and all, so when your exact question is system efficiency. So when you are asking about the system efficiency, so system efficiency is all, I don't say it is increased. You are actually strengthening the system rather than increasing the efficiency of the system. Efficiency is something different terminology, but you may say that you are improving the reliability of the system by injecting more and more renewable in a DC grid.
It's my privilege to propose the vote of thanks on this occasion. Ladies and gentlemen, I, on behalf of IEEE Student Branch, Gayatri Vidya Parishad College of Engineering, and the entire student branch team, extend a very hearty vote of thanks to Dr. Rajesh Gupta sir for gracing this occasion and sharing your valuable time and knowledge with us. A big thank you, sir, for being present with us on this special occasion. We are all grateful to you. I would also like to express our profound gratitude to the faculty for their presence in this session. The audience were very enthusiastic and have learned good number of things from this session. I would also like to thank our student branch counselor and the mentor for Power and Energy Society, Dr. G. Satish Kumar sir, for his directions and suggestions. I would also like to thank Dr. Lakshmi Narayana sir, Dr. Satyanarayana sir, Madan Mohan sir, Bhanu sir, Deepika Rani ma'am for taking part in the event and being with us on this auspicious occasion. I also extend my thanks to our student branch chairperson, Mr. Abhiram, and also to each and every EXCOM member for their enormous planning and cooperation in organizing this event. Once again, Dr. Rajesh sir, we thank you for being with us today. It's been a great pleasure for all of us. And sir, here is a small token of appreciation from IEEE student branch, Gayatri Vidya Parishad College of Engineering, for inaugurating our IEEE Power and Energy Society. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Rajendra sir. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us and inaugurating the session.